Hey guys, welcome to Home Sweet Homeschool. If you're new here, my name is Ashley and I'm a homeschooling mom to one. And in today's video, I'm going to give you my review of North American forest animals, which is a unit from Gather Round Homeschool. If you do not know anything about Gather Round Homeschool, be sure to go check out their website. You can also find them on Facebook, Instagram, all the social stuff. Plus, I have a ton of stuff here on my channel. So if you're new to Gather Round, you're interested in it, you're starting to look at curriculum, I have a lot of flip throughs, day in the life videos, a lot of reviews because we have done a ton of Gather Round Homeschool. So today we're going to talk about North American forest animals. So if you don't know anything about us, I do have a child who I homeschool an only child, and he is in 10th grade this year. And so we use the North American Forest Animals unit as a part of his biology credit. If you're interested in how to use unit studies for high school, I just made 2 videos about it. They're my last 2 videos, and I go through a couple of ways that you can keep up with credits and issue grades and all that. So if you missed those, you can definitely go check those out. So we used this right here. This is a good option for part of a biology credit. So that's why we completed this one. So this is a full unit, meaning that it has 20 lessons. It also means that the student notebook, there's going to be 5 pages of work to complete. The first page is always the notebooking page, and then the pages after it vary based on what the lesson was for that day. Now, if you have an animal lover, it's going to be perfect. My son has always loved animals, and he absolutely loved it. If you ask him overall, did he like this unit? He's going to say yes, but he's also going to say he did not like the geography, and we're going to talk about that when we get to there. So if you don't know anything about Gather Round, it's a unit study, which means everything is included, all of your subjects except for math. And that means you can teach your youngest to your oldest, family style, everybody learning the same thing, but then working in their appropriate student notebook. So even though I have an only child, it does work well for him too. So don't be scared of this curriculum if you only have one child, because it can be used with anybody. So definitely go check them out. I bought the digital version, meaning it's sent to me and I print it at home. I do have like a look inside. I did not print the whole teacher's guide. I did print off a couple of lessons so that I could show you. I walked you through the student notebook for high school. You can also see sample pages on Gather Round's site, but what I did was just saved it on my laptop and then shared it to my TV screen so that my son could see the page as well. And that worked out really good for this unit. So you can print them off. You can also buy print from them. Great quality when you buy from them. And so you can do that. That's an option. And I print at home. I'm a part of the Instant Ink program from HP. It's amazing. You never have to worry about purchasing ink because they keep up with it. I'm looking at my printer like it's talking to me. They keep up with how much ink, or when your ink's running low, and they just send it to you and you just pay a monthly plan. And so it's amazing. I've been using that for years. I have a link to it down in the description box. I love it. So it's a great printer. It prints really well. Sometimes it gives me fits, but I've never had a printer that actually worked perfect all the time. So let's get into North American forest animals. First thing I want to show you is the Seatwork. So the Seatwork Journal, of course, comes in levels just like the student notebook. Of course, I picked high school. It also comes in manuscript and cursive. So depending on what you want for your child, if you want them to be reading and writing in cursive, you could get cursive. It does not teach cursive. It does not teach cursive. It's just the information in it would be written in cursive. So I just usually picked manuscript. I'm more interested in what's in here, not the way it's written. So in this one, and they always focus on something different. In this one, we worked on, I have my notes here. My son worked on commas, what the comma rules are, and using conjunctions, like just a refresh on conjunctions, when and how to use colons, and when and how to use semicolons. And he told me that he was so tired of all this, like he did not want to see a colon or semicolon again. But here's the thing, if you're not using them in your writing, then you need to keep practicing. So that's why we do it. So if you've never seen a Seatwork journal, you do have a space for copy work. We usually do not copy the verse. We just read it out loud together. It has a place for the date and time. You work on spelling words. And then You have your vocabulary, which comes from the lesson, and then you have grammar. And so it kind of gives them a little blurb about what to do. It gives them an example. They identify it, they try it out. That's usually what it looks like. Sometimes they will have, like this one has a fix it, where you need to fix the paragraph. It's predictable, but it does change up over a couple of lessons. So you're not doing the same thing every single lesson. So it's kind of predictable in that sense. Let me see if I can find one that has the bonus. Okay, so sometimes there is a little bonus section at the bottom. And so this one says, like, look over your writing from last week and see if there's any sentences you can change up in order to use a colon. And you would write it on that line. So that's what that is. You could use this if you're keeping grades. You could use this as a daily grade for their language arts. And so I always check it. We do a spelling test, all those good things. So I've heard a lot of people say, like, is it necessary to buy the Seatwork journals? It's not necessary, no, but I like them because it forces me to remember that we need to do spelling, we need to do vocabulary, we need to do copy work, and we need to work on some grammar. Now, there is plenty of language arts inside the units. Don't get me wrong, there is a ton of language arts. But if you want more grammar practice, this is a great way to get it. And like I said, each Seatwork journal for each unit is different. So like if you got a different unit that had a Seatwork journal, you would be working on another focus. This one just happened to be commas, colons, and semicolons. So you can look it up. It'll tell you in Gather Round like what the focus is, so you can see if that's something your child needs to work on or not. If you have your own language arts you already use, you probably don't want this. We only use the language arts from Gather Round, so I try to buy the Seatwork Journal when they offer one. Not every unit has one. So my son used to do this first to start his day off, and now he kind of does it last. So I just kind of let him pick when he wants to do it. But of course, it's something your kids could do independently. So I like those. It does have an appendix with it that will give you like this scope and sequence and tell you exactly what they're working on. There's a spelling cheat sheet. I use this to, look at my hair sticking up, my gosh. I use this to check his spelling, and I would put a grade, you know, what he made. And so if he misses one, like he missed this word, I would draw an arrow and just add it to the next week. I do like that about it. So it has that in there. Also vocabulary, if you don't want your child to have to go back to the teacher's guide to look for the definition for the vocabulary or use a dictionary or their phone, it's right here on this cheat sheet. And then all of the answers are going to be in here. And then I think there's a poster if they need help remembering common prepositions. There was a poster for those on it. So that's all in the Seatwork Journal. All right, let's start talking about the actual student notebook. So, inside the student notebook, like I said, there are 5 pages. The first page, every day, is going to be the notebooking page. Well, here's recitation, if you haven't seen that. And then every day, you're going to start with a notebooking page. Now, what I'm going to say about the unit is that by about lesson 15, I was very, very tired of learning about animals. Though I find animals super interesting and neat, how God created them to adapt and their life cycle and their habitat, all that is so super interesting. But by about the 15th lesson, when we had done the exact same thing every lesson and done the exact same notebooking page, I was kind of tired of doing it. My son, on the other hand, enjoyed it, but it does get very repetitive because every day the lesson's pretty much set up the same. It's going to introduce you to the animal. You're going to talk about its appearance. You're going to talk about its diet, its habitat, interesting facts, and life cycle. And that gets a little boring to read 20 lessons. That's a lot. But my son loved it. So the notebooking page, that's an everyday thing. What I love about it is it does have a place to keep up with the time if you're having to keep up with time in order to earn a credit, okay? So that's going to be every day you've got the notebooking. And then, like I said, throughout this, you have different pages that are going to reach your different subjects, whether it be science or language arts, or we got geography and history, and then there may be art. Sometimes there's art, sometimes there isn't. So let's talk about language arts, because that always comes up when people talk about using unit studies. Is there enough language arts? And let me just tell you, there's so much language arts within this unit that I really had to pick and choose what we did, because there's a ton in here, and you could actually fill your day every day with lots of language arts if you wanted to. So let's talk about it. First off, the big project. So every one of their units have a big project. In North American Forest Animals, the big language arts project is to create a Google Slides presentation with research about an animal. Well, that's great if your kids love animals. My son loves it. He picked wolves. He's always loved wolves. And so they are walked through it throughout the unit. They're walked through, like, what do you already know about the animal? What do you want to find out? And then you learn how to use Google Slides, which I love, because I do feel like making a presentation is something he's probably going to have to do in college. I remember having to do that on PowerPoint. And then I use PowerPoint every day as a teacher. Now, he may go into a career where he's not making a presentation, but I do think it's a skill you need to know. And so if you have a Google address, email address, you can use Google Slides for free. If not, you could definitely use this with PowerPoint, Keynote, any type of presentation software that you have. But they do walk you through it very well. I will say that. They walk you through, like, you know, how to open it up. Very, very basic walkthrough, okay? And so over the course of 20 lessons, you're compiling your information. You're watching short videos about how to do certain things on here. And so this is the big thing. And I do like that. I also like the fact that there is like oral presentation tips, because you're going to have to get up and speak in front of people at some point. And then I also like that they included a rubric. So this is a self-assessment rubric where your child can kind of grade themselves. The only thing I don't like is that they put it at less than 20. If you're going to give your child a rubric, or you're going to ask them to do a paper or a presentation, they need to see what's expected of them at the beginning. So I would definitely take this and show it to them at the beginning before they start their slideshow, their whole planning. This is what's expected of them. Learn that from being a teacher. You let them know up front what's expected. You don't wait until the end, until they can't fix it, for them to assess themselves. So that's the only thing. I love that the rubric's there, but I do think it needs to be shown to them at the beginning. So that's the big project. One thing I feel like with that project, though, is they could have went into a little more depth with these older kids. You could talk about how, you know, what exactly goes on a slide, because you've got kids that want to put everything on a slide. They want to just read all their research, you know, that they've got, and they want to put it all on the slide. And so we did have to have separate conversations about, okay, a presentation is just bulleted points. You know, it just gives you an idea of what you need to talk about. It lets them have some bulleted points, the people that are watching. You might want to have a video. You might want to have a picture. Graphics are good. We also talked about how it needs to be cohesive. The fonts need to match. The theme throughout needs to match, and why that matters. Those things weren't necessarily put in here. And I think in order to make a good presentation, you need to know those things. So could a little more instruction and hand-holding been put in there? Absolutely. But I covered it with them because I'm used to making presentations. That's kind of my thing. So that is the overall big unit project. Okay, so that's a great language arts project, but people still want more, and there is plenty in here. In fact, I decided to write it down in my notes, all the opportunities for writing that was within this unit. Okay, so I'm just gonna go, I could list them all. Create a short comic on your character. So that's one of the things in lesson 3. You create a character. And this was a free write. So you create a character, and then you can make a short comic about it, okay? Simple enough. Lesson 6, so that was lesson 3. And in lesson 6, they want you to write a paragraph on a separate sheet of paper about why each of these places, Delaware, Alaska, and Hawaii, I think, is not suitable for the bobcat to call home. So yeah, that's something your child could probably research and write in a day. Writing a paragraph is not very much. We didn't always do all these. I'm just showing you all the options, okay? Then also in lesson 6, so this is the same day, on top of the 5 sheets, you can also write a paragraph if you want to. And then you can also dig deeper on this page. So this page was about animal behavior, which was a really neat lesson. But you could dig deeper and on a separate piece of paper, write a persuasive essay about which animal makes the better pet, dog or cat. Why do you think it's best? Okay, first off, I get that we're talking about animal behavior, but that writing prompt for a high schooler seems very immature. That sounds like something I would give my 5-year-olds when I was teaching writing. Which pet's better, a dog or a cat? And then I would set them up with a sentence and they would tell me one thing, like one reason, okay? I feel like that was very, very immature for this age group. Second problem I have with it is if you've never taught your child how to do a persuasive essay and then you say, okay, on a separate piece of paper, go write a persuasive essay, and they don't know what to do, I don't blame them, because this offers no instruction on what a persuasive essay is, what its job is, how to set one up, none of that. So what I did, this is actually one I selected to do, but we changed the topic. And I didn't just let him work on it for this lesson. I'm like, I'm going to pick a couple of writing assignments and we're going to work on them for the whole time, not just this lesson. I don't expect him to put out a persuasive essay on one day. I feel like that takes some thought and some planning, and one day's too short for that. So my recommendation is go through and look at all the writing options, pick the ones you think would serve your child best, and work on those throughout. We ended up, he likes Squid Game, which you may or may not think that's appropriate, but I've watched it all, he's watched it all. We like a lot of TV, okay? And so I got him to work on a persuasive essay about why Squid Game logic is not the best way to get rid of debt, which is what the whole show's about. You have debt, you can play the Squid Game, you have the possibility of getting out of debt, okay? It's a bad idea. But that's what he wrote it on. That was a more mature topic for him to write about than which is the better pet, okay? That's like 5, 6, 7-year-old all day, you could tell me. That was a great writing prompt for them, not for high school. Okay, so that was one we used. I just changed the topic, and then we learned before I got him to write, we went over again what a persuasive essay was, how to set one up, and then we work on writing it, okay? Then I'm not going to flip to every one of them, but in lesson 8, you have to rewrite a story from another character's perspective. So throughout this unit, you're reading a couple of fables, since you're talking about animals. You're reading a couple of fables, which are always fun. And so you take one of the stories and you write the same story from another character's perspective. That was fun. He did do that. Lesson 9, you write a report comparing a dog's vision to human vision. We didn't do that, but that's an option. Also in lesson 9, same lesson, persuasive essay about controlled coyote population. So that would require some research and some thought. So we didn't do that one. And that's on top of the stuff you're already doing, okay? These were all extras. Now in lesson 12, we did do the biography of Davy Crockett. That was actually an assignment, and I'll show you that one. Because if it's an assignment, I don't, I'm like, yeah, we're going to do that. So that's what this page looked like, where you did a little research on him. The great thing is that, if there is a website you might need to use, they go ahead and include that on the app. If you don't have the Gather Round app, you need it, because links to videos and all your resources will be on there. So definitely do that. So we just keep my laptop available so we can go to the videos and to the extra websites and things like that are already linked. So I did get him to do this, but beforehand I went online and I looked up a rubric for writing a biography. And so plenty of choices out there, plenty of them are free. Just look for the one that you like the best. I printed this out, I showed it to him, I showed him what was expected. If he wanted a 100, this is what he had to do. If he wanted, if he was okay with just meeting the standard, this is what the rubric looks like. And this helps me grade his paper to give him a fair grade. So he did that on here. I didn't make him make like a final copy. I got him to plan it, to do the research it, plan it, write it out. We did go through and edit it a little bit, but I don't make him take everything to final copy. So that's in there. So we did that. Then in lesson 13, I did get him to do this one because this was a part of, I believe it was a part, yeah. It was a part of, no, it was an extension activity. So you do a little bit of information on Groundhog Day, what it means, why it started, all that good stuff. And then the extension activity was to write a news story about Groundhog Day. So you could take it in any direction that you wanted to, and a page for that was in the appendix. So we did that one. Okay, then you had the free write on lesson 14. Now, I don't always make him do the free write. Sometimes when it's a free write, I let him just work on the book that he's already writing. Like instead of writing something else, just go write on what you're already working on. So if it's a free write day, I let him choose. Do you want to do the free write or do you want to work on your writing? Any of that's, it's fine with me. Lesson 14 is a paragraph summary. 15 is a summary and a slideshow. 16, essay comparing hedgehogs and porcupines. Another one in 16, creating an itinerary. 17, you stage a debate. Lesson 18, list the pros and cons of the safety of air fresheners. Lesson 18 also is a personification free write, and that's another time I let him work on his novel that he was writing. So just within this unit, there were 16 writing activities. That's a lot of writing. If you want your kids to do things well, I don't think you need 16 options. So like I said, maybe writing them all out and then picking the ones you think would serve your kids best would be better. So 16. It was just a lot, okay? So we made sure that we did the unit project, which was the slideshow. We did the persuasive essay and then a couple of other small ones, okay? All right, let's talk about science. So obviously this is a very science-heavy unit. If you're wanting to cover science, you got it right here, okay? So it's a lot of animal information, and you're gonna find it all on the notebooking page. There are other topics though throughout here. You're not just talking about animals. For instance, here you're talking about types of trees because these animals are living in forest, and so it's important to know the different types of forests. We also did a page about hydrophobic, which we learned about in chemistry. This one here is like layers of a tree, so you could do a lot with going outside and checking out that. We talked about animal teeth. We talked about atrophy. We talked about sound. We talked about food chains. I'm looking at this thing here. It's a ton of stuff. We talked about night vision and ruminants and adaptations. Like here's the lesson on animal teeth, okay? We talked about paper airplanes, marsupials, parachute drops, hedgehogs and porcupines, torpor and hibernation, deodorizer, scents, pill bugs, paper armor. I mean, we covered a lot of different things to do with science on top of everything we were already learning about animals. As far as history, so if you're looking at, well, is there any history in there? Yes, there is. We talked about the Inuit people, the teddy bear, Lewis and Clark, Davy Crockett, and then we did a lesson on wild and crazy pets, and it talked about the White House and some of the animals that had lived at the White House. As far as social studies, we talked about adaptability, animal behaviors, families and packs, and hunting strategies. Then there is a ton of geography. There isn't geography in every single lesson, so if you want your kids to do map work and things like that, there is plenty. This was my son's least favorite part. He got very, very tired of doing these pages. This one here, you had to label the Canadian provinces, territories, and U.S. states on the map. Okay, so that's fine. This is the first lesson, so he was okay with it. And I let him just use abbreviations for all of it. But when you continue, again, labeling the map, answering questions, it's a lot. It's a lot of labeling the same things, which I think that's how you learn stuff, but he got really tired of it. And a lot of it is first label where you live. Well, when you're in high school, you know where you live in relation to other things. That's a great activity if you're young and you're not very familiar with the map and the world. That's a great activity. But for him, he got really tired of it. So by the time we got, like way back here, this is mountain line ranges, a lot of times we would just pull out our maps. We have a map book. And we would pull it out and we would just find these locations and talk about these locations and not worry so much about him doing all that labeling. He'd already done it through so many that it's just like, really? Again? So he didn't like that. And then at the end, you do get to test your skills and you get to label, which is something you've been practicing the entire time. So if map work is your thing, there's plenty of it in here. Plenty. Lots of labeling. As far as art, you are drawing on each of the notebooking pages. You're either sketching the animal or you're sketching their tracks. So my son does not like to draw, but like this one, he chose to do the animal. A lot of times, you know, if he didn't want to do it and there was already a picture of the animal on there, like this one, for instance, he would just write about the appearance. He wouldn't try to draw it. And that doesn't matter to me. Like that's not a big deal. I was trying to find one that has the tracks on. Okay, this one, you're drawing the tracks. And so they'll give you a picture of it and then you're going to draw those. And so that's some of the art that's in here. I know you make a mask when you talk about raccoons. There's a page about quill work when you talk about the porcupine. And so we watched a video about how people use their quills to make things, which was really interesting. And then you can try your hand at it, like with toothpicks. My son's not very artsy. So we usually, if there's a video to watch somebody do it, we'll do that instead of actually doing art. And then as far as Bible, there are devotions at the end of every lesson in the teacher's guide, which are wonderful. And then in here we did a lesson on the power of words. That was really good. So yeah, that's a lot. So that's all that's in that book. We use the appendix like crazy this time. A lot of times I hardly ever pull anything from the appendix, but I felt like they included so much in the appendix. The answer keys there, so I always print that out and put that in my planner. And then I print out the appendix and I just pull it as I'm preparing for the next day. I pull it out because you're going to need like the fables if you already don't have the fable book. It's already in the back. Not only do you use this in one of your writing assignments, but you also read it. I think there's like 2 times to do reading and comprehension. So that's in there. There was a food chain diagram. I mean, we use this a lot. I don't think I've ever pulled so much from the appendix. This was to rewrite the story from another character's point of view. And what I love is it tells you at the top, like this is lesson 8, page 5. So you know exactly what you're going to use it for. Yeah, another fable. Here's your map to pull out for the journey of Lewis and Clark. These were for 2 different lessons. So this was for one lesson. It's at the top. And this was for another lesson where we talked about vision. So plenty of things back there in the back. This is where he wrote a news article about Groundhog Day. I mean, just so much. There was a map. We referenced this map an awful lot. I just had it in like a sheet protector. So here's the Hudson Bay area. So they include tons of maps. Any extra pages you need are right there in the back. So overall, I thought it was a very great unit. It was very full. I felt like he learned a lot. And I thought there was a lot of great things in there. There might have been a little too much, and so we did have to choose exactly what I wanted him to focus on. But I do think it was a really good unit. So definitely check out Gather Round Homeschool and find a unit to try. If you're new, just try out one and see how it works. But we really enjoyed this unit a whole lot. There's tons of resources on their app. You can print a book list. You can print scope and sequence. You can print some planning pages. You need to go check out the app. If you have any questions about North American forest animals, homeschooling a high schooler, Gather Round Homeschool, any of that, leave them down in the comments below. And as always, thank you so much for watching.